There we go. Just so we haven't got loads of background noise. It's tricky when everyone's coming in. It's always nice to say hello, isn't it? So can you just double check that you have got your microphone muted? I've muted all, but some people, for some reason, I can't seem to mute. It just kind of pops back. Linda Keith, I've just muted. There's some weird thing that yeah, only mutes some people. Sorry, this is a bit boring. Just letting the last few people in. So yeah, so I hope you're all well, and that, those of you that are regular have had a nice little arty break. I can see Daryl's got a little glass of wine. I hope you've all got a nibble or a packet of crisps, cup of tea. I've got a glass of red like I normally do because I've run out of my vodka. So just a little bit of housekeeping like normal. You're all on mute. If you want to ask anything, ask as I'm demonstrating. Don't wait till the end, and you can just press your space bar whilst you're asking the question, and it's a shortcut to unmute yourself, and then when you release your space bar you go back to being muted. So just shout out as I'm going along. I don't stop talking literally for the next hour and a half, so you have to interrupt me, but don't feel rude for doing that. I promise I won't be offended. You just literally can't get in. I'll keep trying to pause and take a breath. Other housekeeping, we're recording this, you'll get the video tomorrow. Just work at your own pace, because so there might be bits that you miss, but you're just having a nice time doing something else, so just kind of doodle around and you'll get the video, and then you can try other little bits, but don't feel like you've got to rush and do everything. And I might yeah, and Gav's on the chat if you log yourself out and you need to get back in. I've always got my head down so I can't see what's going on, and if you're a bit worried about asking a question, you can just pop it in the chat box and then Gavin will shout it round the corner to me because he's head of tech. So and he can help out with any tech problems if you've got anything going on, you're a bit confused about Zoom. So lettering, right, so it's a massive problem. I call it it's a massive problem for you if you are a non-letterer, so if you haven't got any lettering training, because it's hard to make letters look really nice informally. I think if you don't know what you're doing, they're kind of like drawing nice letters. It's like learning to draw people. To make them really beautiful is an incredibly dedicated discipline. And for those of you that, and I know there's quite a lot of you on this call who are lettering artists and calligraphers and professional lettering artists, I know that your problem is that you're so formal in your training that it's really hard to untether that and undo it and do not rubbish lettering, but kind of loose, easy, quick lettering. And that's what the sketchbooks really need. That you sketchbooks and journals, we know, are really safe places to record our deepest, darkest thoughts, to do experiments, to go a little bit wrong. And the lettering can really mess that up if you try to make it look really good. If you adopt all your standard lettering practices, if you've got formal training of laying out, measuring out, doing X height and all that kind of stuff, actually it kind of undoes all of the looseness of the experiment, because you've then spending 3 days doing the lettering on a page that's just some little sketches. So, and this is a problem that I've had because my background is in lettering more than anything else. I've worked for 20 years as a lettering artist and sign writer and letter cutter. I trained in calligraphy and drawn lettering and typography. So I've got the credentials and I am legit, more than all the other stuff I teach you, which is why I'm extra nervous on this class. So it's been a problem for me with my journals because of exactly like that. I just didn't quite know how to get lots of lovely quick lettering down. So I've been experimenting loads, and all the stuff I'm going to show you today is a combination of different things that I've tried that I quite like. And what I'd like you to do is just have a go at all of the different things and find something out of it that you feel like you could work with. So we're working away from perfect letters to be more free and just to do some nice little experiments, really. My overall findings, so really I should be doing this at the end of the class, but I'll tell you at the beginning so you can sort of log it in your head. My overall findings with journal lettering is that actually the best thing is to use your own handwriting, and if your handwriting is rubbish, then that's what you need to work on. You need to get a little handwriting book and some dotted paper and do a little bit of handwriting practice with a really nice gel pen or a pencil every day until you've got a kind of a style of your handwriting that you feel you could really quickly jot down notes in your sketchbook. So I actually think, so we could just stop the class now, couldn't we? I'm not going to, I promise, because there are lots of nice things you can do with lettering, and I love using more decorative lettering for titles and things. I just try not to use it too much in the body of the text. So words, if you want little words to practice with tonight, things like days of the week and months of the year are really good, because those are the kind of things, or place names, those are the kind of ways that you're going to be probably using more decorative lettering, put more time into your lettering. Right, so I'm going to start super easy, and then it's going to stay quite easy, and then it's going to get a tiny little bit difficult at the end. All right. I'm going to show you the biggest cheat of all right now. So let me just pop on down to my camera. Okay. Right, well, it's really nice not having this at all funny angles and sellotaped bits of paper. I'm doing it in my left hand. So the first cheat of all, you might not have the kit to do this, but I'm going to show it to you, is letter stamps. And I bet you're all thinking, oh God, I came on this class to learn lettering and she's going to show stamps and I know how to do it. Let me show you this new way. This was invented by somebody in a journal class that I did. And when I reminded her that I call it Julie's method, she was like, did I invent that? Yes, you did, Julie. She invented this as a mistake and I still use it now because I think it's brilliant. Okay, so I've inked up, that funny little petal is an ink pad. It's this Colourbox Petal Point ink pad. And these are old shop ink blocks, but you can get lovely little ink pads from Tiger and places like that for £1. So put on a scrap piece of paper, stamp your letter, and then keep stamping it until the ink nearly runs out. And then that's at that point, that's when you would put it on your sketchbook page when it's quite pale. Let's just do another one. So scrap bit of paper, sketchbook page. This is great for a month or a place name or something like that. And then just with a fine line, so I try one with a pencil and try one with a fine liner. All you do is just colour it in, but perhaps you know, you could get a little bit fancy because the skeleton of the letter is already there. So add a little bit of pressure at the top, maybe. Release the pressure. Do a nice little bit of colouring in. And then it looks like you've got a pencil drawn letter. I'll just go a bit closer. So you could also do this with a fine liner pen and then just fill it in, if it's a thin one, just with lines. So it's like a bit of a cheaty colouring in. You could curve the serifs if you're into that sort of thing. But to create a word like this, it will look really, really pretty. You could fill it in with tiny dots. But it's a really great way of getting a layout, you know, getting some letters on a page if you're feeling a bit nervous about, sorry, it's not focusing very well. There we go. If you're feeling a bit nervous, but I think what the end result is that it starts to look quite hand rendered, especially if you can kind of do it roughly. You could even just draw around it if you've got a steady hand, and do kind of rough letter, sort of a rough pencil mark, which makes it look very hand rendered. Same with coloured, a coloured pencil. So that is my cheat number one. And that's the easiest way, I think, to do lettering in a journal that doesn't look like it's stamped. I'm just doing this really quickly, but you could have a really nice time adjusting the thick areas because you've already got the stamp down. Up to you. Anyway, that's quick cheat number one. Any questions on that one? Oh, and just very quickly, the other thing that's really great to do, which I do loads, is, and because I like to pretend I'm a librarian, is just have a date stamp. So this can be a really nice way to run something, you know, a similar use of lettering all the way through your journal. And it's just lovely to have. I just love things like this, because I just, like I said, pretend I'm a librarian. So to put your sketch in, stick in a little date stamp, and then, you know, maybe add a bit of text about your day. Already, this is quite an interesting little panel with maybe, you know, a little sketch there of a plant that you bought your mum or something like that. So adding these sort of pre-done elements and then a little bit of hand lettering or nice practiced handwriting is a great, simple, easy way. And you can get really lovely stamps as well. So that might be an interesting thing to play with. Okay, any questions on that bit? Good.
Can you
Is that Linda?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not very well up on how this works technically. But how do you get the letters, if you're using stamps, to be straight? You know, a straight line.
Yeah, well, I probably don't, because I don't operate with any straight lines.
Right. I mean,
I don't use a ruler.
No, but I mean, is there a method if you wanted to have a straight line, or are you best just to say, you know, it'll never be straight, it just has to be randomly, you know?
I think you could draw a pencil ruled line, and then perhaps, you know, there's a point on your stamper where you know, perhaps you always put the base up to the line, but depending on your stamp set, like these especially, I think it would be difficult. So
yeah, okay.
I think it's better to embrace the wonky. But if anybody, I don't use stamps massively. But if anybody does and they've got tips for things like that, but I like the imperfection in my sketchbooks. I think, you know, I think because my drawings are always a bit wonky, so it all gels in nicely.
Lucia, oh sorry, it's Teresa here, and that other lady first.
Sorry, can I ask Linda, can you mute your microphone again, please, Linda? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, is it Teresa?
Yes, I was going to speak, but I thought another lady wanted to speak first, no?
It's Claire. I was just going to say there are things called stamp jigs,
right,
that you can get.
Yeah.
So I can show you later. It's like a clear piece of plastic with like a right angled tool.
Brilliant.
And you put the stamp, you stamp onto the plastic using the
tool.
tool.
Fantastic.
And then you move the plastic over to where you want it with the jig. Remove the plastic, place your stamp in the jig, and it does it exactly where you want it in a straight line.
That's brilliant.
Oh,
yeah. Stamp jigs.
Stamp jigs. Okay.
J-I-G. Yeah.
Okay, let's just pop that down on there. So it's stamp jigs. It's on the vid. just to remind you, oh, G-I-G.
J-I-G,
J-I-G.
jig, as in like a woodwork
Like a
jig.
jigsaw, yeah.
Yeah.
Stamp jig. Brilliant. Teresa.
Well, I think Claire's probably resolved the difficulty
Oh, has
then.
she? Oh, that's good.
Yes,
Well done, Claire.
I used them at Christmas time, and what I wanted to say to that lady was, I forgot the first lady that spoke and asked. I did draw pencil lines, but what I discovered was with my stamps, sometimes the actual rubber of the stamp is not all equally aligned.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So maybe your A is like 2 millimeters from the bottom, but
Yeah.
your B could actually be like 5 millimeters from the bottom, depending on how expensive your stamps are. Mine weren't terribly expensive ones, but then no matter how hard I tried, you still couldn't get them aligned.
Yeah. So in which
But
case,
obviously
sounds
this
like a
jig might
stamp
be the
jig
answer.
would be
Yeah.
really good.
Hi, button, please. Pippa.
Hi, Pippa.
Hi. If you are because you've got your stamps are wooden mounted,
Yeah.
but you can get the unmounted ones.
Ah, yes. And then you put them on an acrylic block, don't you?
Yeah, which come with a grid on them. So you could, if you really want a straight line, you could use those.
That's brilliant.
You
Well, you are so good. All of you, honestly, I reckon we could rule the world. We could rule the creative world between us all, couldn't we, with our knowledge? Thanks so much, Pippa. That's such a good tip. That's brilliant. Well, I hope that's answered your question in spades, Linda. Okay. Right. So based on this, this sort of theory, let me show you something else. Now, you won't have the kit. I don't think you'll have the kit for this unless you've got an endless sort of box of calligraphy pens. But this is just another little thing based on that if you are a calligrapher, or you like just playing with letters and you've got calligraphy pens, let me just zoom out. You might have sort of felt tippy ones like this, which are much easier to use than the you know, a dip nib or a metal nib. And you can get very pale ones like this, in which case you could just do a bit of calligraphy instead of drawn lettering. And then do exactly the same. Oops. And it doesn't have to be good calligraphy. It can be a bit wonky and the spacing can be wrong. But again, you could go in with a coloured pencil and add little bits, add some little serifs if you want to, and colour it in. And if some bits haven't joined up, you could just sort of work in with it with your pencil. And again, you could, that little framework, under framework of a pale felt tip calligraphy pen, or even if you've got a dark calligraphy pen, you could do this with a white pencil or any other colour on top. Just have a little, you know, draw in the line, so you could then sort of build this structure. This has actually sort of suddenly gone a bit more difficult because this relies on the fact that perhaps you like using calligraphy pens. The same can be done with felt tip brush pens. So if you're fancy pants at doing brush lettering, you can do exactly the same. If you're not fancy pants and you just use the tip of the pen, you can still get involved with a pencil and just add some nice little details, some little serifs, and make your lettering that's not looking great interesting. Just make it into an interesting typeface, sort of colouring it in, maybe shading some letters and not the others. But knowing that you perhaps have done a little bit of lettering and maybe it's not looking how you want it to look. Your sketchbook is a place to have a little go at adjusting things and breaking some rules. So this can work really well, I think. Add some little stripes, use that as the colour underneath. So this coloured pencil is a watercolour pencil, only because I couldn't find any other pencils. It's a really good quality pencil, so the pigment is really strong. But I don't want to spend ages drawing letters, but I love playing with letters. And when you've already got some sort of structure down, whether it's through a stamp or a, you know, just a felt tip pen, just to know that you can muck around with it. No, I get great pleasure out of just sort of pottering away with lettering like this when I haven't got to worry about it too much. And you can see it's pretty messy, my colouring, but I'm quite happy with the way that would look in the sketchbook. I think it's just interesting. So you could add all sorts of little patterns. And like I said, even if your lettering isn't perfect, by adding these little layers of pattern and texture on top, it kind of makes it look quirky and illustrative. The same, you can do the same if you've got an undercolour like this, just putting some little dots on with a fine liner or with a little Posca paint pen. Okay, the chiselled pen is a Zig calligraphy pen, and it's got a 5mm nib at one end and a 2mm nib at the other. So you can do really tiny calligraphy. So I've got a hair, no, it's my shadow. Tiny calligraphy with that one. And big with this. And it doesn't have to be fancy calligraphy, just draw big letters. If you're not a calligrapher, try holding this nib at 45 degrees and just doing your normal writing. So if you're holding it flat, you would get, you do with any sort of felt tip calligraphy. If you hold it flat, you will get this sort of lettering. If you hold it sort of completely upright, you'll get a different type of lettering. But if you hold it at 45 degrees and just do it with your own handwriting, but kind of do it primary school, you'll get a calligraphic combination of nice sort of thicks and thins. So it's a really friendly way into calligraphy using one of these. And if you're actually got lots of calligraphy experience, it's a really great thing to keep in a pencil case for sketchbooking, because you don't then have to bring bottles of ink with you and selections of nibs, and even things like the Pilot Parallel pens. You've then still got to run a cartridge and things like that. I do like using those in my sketchbook. So, but I like kind of pick up calligraphy pens, pick up and put down a ball.
Lucia, it's Lou. Hello. That calligraphy pen, is it water soluble?
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, I would think so. I'm not 100% sure. Should we have a go? Here's a spray.
It is.
It is water soluble. Oh, I've got it's really water soluble. So I've got ink on my finger. Yeah, it is water soluble. Yeah, so you can't go over that one, but you can get felt tip brush pens and felt tip Zig calligraphy pens with that are completely watertight. There's loads of them actually. I do love the Zig pens, and you can just get ones which are just they've got a bullet tip, and again they've got a little baby bullet tip on the other end. So if you're not a calligrapher, you could use, you know, you don't like using the broad edge pens, you know, you could just use a felt tip, and these are great because you can then use your little end to add sort of little serifs which turn your lettering into something a little bit more interesting. And that's by the same company. It's by Zig. I really love all of Zig's pens, and I've got masses of them, and I've had literally for 20 years, and they're still going. So, and these Zig clean colour ones you can get in a big pack with lots of different colours, and they're like my kind of colouring pens, really. I've got a big jar of them that I keep by the phone, like this, look. And if I've got like a colour emergency, I know I'm all right. So if anybody has any of those, I do on a regular basis.
What is a colour emergency?
Well, it's when I'm doing a little bit of art, I think, oh my God, I need a red. And then I've literally, in every room in the house, I've got colour access, whether it's an old highlighter pen. I don't know, that is a colour emergency for me. So moving on with this in mind, have a little look at one of your sheets. So this one, so this is still moving on to the sort of easy level. And it's one of my favourite techniques, which is changing basic letter forms. So I'm going to use I've got some dot paper here. And I gave you a printable that you can print out, but I buy these lovely pads by Rhodia, and they are dot pads. So they are just pads full of dot paper. And they're really good for practicing letters on. I love it that it's just a little A5 pad. It's not very expensive. And I practice calligraphy and sort of layout and test pens and stuff like that, because you've already got the dots, so you don't have to draw any lines, and they're just nice to doodle on as well, so you could just join up the dots if you wanted to. So looking at this little sheet, it says try dot letters. It's so easy, but we're going to do a slight variation. So we'll quickly do the dot letters. So try doing just choosing a few letters and doing them as if you were writing them for a little child to read. So let's do an F. In fact, I'll write a word. So you're writing them quite clearly. And I quite like to do an A a bit like that. And I like to do my Y's a bit like that. And then obviously the dot form is at the end of every sort of end and beginning point of all the letters, just add a dot. And it kind of anchors it in place. And again, this is a really simple and easy thing to do based on your own handwriting for everything. You know, it's so quick. But using the same principle, you can add different shapes on the end and it's going to have a different effect. So you can obviously add serifs. And I like to do it not just a straight line, but a slight curve to my line, I think looks quite nice. On the ones that have got a curve, you can add a little ball, so you can combine the two. So on the S's and the C's, it looks nice. Top of the R, little ball, and then a line at the end. Like we did before, this looks really great if you've got a thicker fine liner that you do your lettering in, and then with a really thin little nibbed fine liner, you do the little serifs. It looks really detailed. Another shape that looks great is something that I've seen quite a few pro lettering artists do. So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And it's doing little tiny triangles. These are a bit more clunky, so you have to leave a bit more space, which I haven't. And you need quite a sharp pencil. But they instantly change your standard handwriting. And they're just nice to do. It's like I said before, once I've got this lettering down, I love all these little ways of, but I could just quite happily sit. I'm not worrying too much about the spacing between the letters. Sometimes I'm making little adjustments and adding that shape underneath the S instead of banging into it. But I also like it when I start messing around with things like this and I don't quite know what they're going to look like. Let's try a month. And another really effective shape is a heart. And it gives a slightly circus feel to the letters. So you have to do some upside down hearts as well. I years ago did a heart sketchbook club on decorated Mexican hearts. And I had all these tracing sheets for hearts. But it turned out, because it was all women, and women are really good at drawing hearts, it seems, because we spend all of our teenage years illustrating hearts and writing people's initials by hearts. So that can work really well as well. So it's, it's brilliant to try different shapes. You just think of all different shapes. Even things like little squares work really well. And I just love, like I said, the visual effect of little dark areas, because those of you who come regularly know that I love this idea of an eye magnet. In our eyes drawn to anywhere where there's dark components, and it's also drawn to contrast. So where you've got that thicker little chunk, or a horizontal and a vertical, a thicker chunk and a thinner line, our eyes love that play. So this is, again, a really effective, although it's a very simple technique, it's very effective as a design concept. Using that same principle of lined letters, you can see on here that there are really basic alphabets. So we all know how to do these sort of very simple forms. There's no rocket science in that. But by adjusting them in lots of different ways, just one basic form, it's already using your knowledge, but adjusting it slightly. So for instance, if you had the letter A, so I was going to do a fancy one then, but let's just do a normal one. Try doing it in lots of different ways in your journal. So there's my basic A. What happens if I do my basic A, but raise the crossbar so that it's up there? What happens if I lower the crossbar? What happens if I make my A really wide and do the same sort of thing? So you could have a high crossbar. Again, just playing with the same, what you already know, but wiggling it around a little bit. What happens if there is a lean to your A? What happens if there's a curve to your A to one side? What happens if it curves the other way? And again, you could do all sorts of things with your crossbar here. You could thicken your crossbar. I've got sketchbooks full of, in fact, I can probably show you one. I could sit for hours and hours with one letter in a sketchbook and just mess around with it, really. Well, these are more drawn. I was just wondering, look, this one's got a kind of a curvy crossbar and a wiggly crossbar and a V crossbar. I think some of them don't really look like A's. I just sit there with a fine liner playing with things like this. And this dot pad, where it's highly addictive if you've not had a go before. So the same goes with, say you had, you'd started writing with low level, you decided you were going to go with your low level A. It would mean then that perhaps all the other letters that have crossbars, they could also all follow that same principle. So with an E, there's our standard E, which is really nice to do with a dot pad because you just join up the dots. Let's join up a few less dots. Standard E, low crossbar. Completely lovely. I love that. So ear would be very nice. And you could then, what happens if you made your R really low as well? So you're starting to sort of use your basic letters, but just change tiny things, but with no pressure. And it doesn't really matter if they go a bit wrong and they don't follow any sort of family. Those of you who are pro, you'll be thinking, oh, that's not part of the same family. Don't worry about it. Just make it your own and enjoy the feeling of making the letters. I quite like having larger bowls on top of letters. So a B might be like that. It's doing the things that you think, oh, it wouldn't look like that. Try that and see what it looks like. Slanting looks really, I think, looks really lovely in a sketchbook, especially if you are writing about something that you were late for, because it kind of looks like the lettering is then mimicking what you're talking about in the story in your sketchbook. But I'm not doing anything fancy with the lettering here. All I'm doing is just sort of giving it the feel. Look, I'll add some little serifs, and then it starts to look a bit like a book hand. I was moving on there to our next little bit. Look, I was thickening up a little bit. So, oh yeah, the other last little thing I just wanted to mention on that basic letter form is, let's move that aside, is say you did, let's do another month, let's do March. What about playing with upper and lowercase? So that can look, I'd quite often do this when I write instructions and I'm going a bit wrong with the layout, and then if I start to make it look a bit wiggly, it looks like I intended for it to be like that. Or if I just get confused and get someone called me and then I forget what I'm writing, it kind of gives you permission to create imperfect lettering, I think. The same goes for thick and thin. So perhaps you might thicken some of your letters. And then have it next to a thin letter. Thick, thin. Again, I think that looks really lovely. I might add my little serifs on there again. I like a sans serif, but I don't know, I love the feel of adding those little serifs on. So there's so much to do with these just very simple primary school forms, and on the dot paper it's really nice practicing your handwriting and practicing, like I said, these sort of primary school letter forms and trying to do little book hands. So we wouldn't normally do our G like that, but in a journal perhaps we could experiment with doing these sort of slightly outdated and unusual lettering forms, just with a pencil. So that's that on single letters. Now I'm sure that quite a lot of you know how to do Sheets calligraphy, and I will just go through it really quickly because there might be some of you that don't know, but it's something that I think is one of the best ways of making any handwriting look a bit like calligraphy and a bit like intentional lettering, without pressure. So it's using, again, a sort of a primary school hand or your own handwriting. And I've demonstrated this before with my left hand, which I'll do in a minute. So if I was I'd try and do my best handwriting-ish. I'll just get a fresh piece of paper in a minute. So if we did a title in a sketchbook, what do we had any days of the week that I haven't? We'll do Sunday. So if I was going to write Sunday, my best handwriting, every time that I go back over it and look, every time that my pencil went down, I'm just going to very gently thicken that line. And so I went round, so you can see on a curve it sort of fizzles out. I went down there, so I'm going to make that line thick, and then I went up, I went down there, I went up, down there, up, down there. So I sort of went around, so I've got to do a bit of a curvy one, but that was still a down. Leave the ups thin. Down. And what this is doing is mimicking a pointed nib, where when you're doing copperplate calligraphy, or some of you might have done modern calligraphy, you're mimicking the pressure that you put on the nib on the downstroke, and where the tines open and release more ink, you get this thicker line. But we're just doing Sheets calligraphy, which is easier because you can do it with any kind of tool. It's quite nice to do with a biro when you're sat on the phone. And you could add your little serifs on if you want to. I'm just going to sharpen my pencil. But you can, so then if you want to, you can leave it open. But if you've gone a bit wobbly with your lines, you can just colour them in. Or half colour them. So I'm going to do, now I've got a little bit better at working with my left hand, but I'm just going to do the same writing again, but not in such an arty way. Just to prove to you that this method makes any writing look good. When I say that now, I might have potentially put my foot in it. So remember, I'm thickening all the downstrokes manually. And in my head, I know which ones are the downstrokes, but you might have to sort of whisper it in your head. Up, down, up, down. Adding the serifs. I would have to say that the inspiration that I found most when it comes to lettering for sketchbooks has not been from sort of formal examples. It's from looking at how illustrators create lettering, because they haven't then got a lot of illustrators don't have lettering training, and so they break lots of rules that I think, well, you can't do that. Of course you can, because it's art and it's allowed. And illustrators are kind of radical like that, do crazy stuff, and they don't care for any rules of anything. And that's a really interesting source of lettering to get inspired. Okay, so it's not looking wonderfully spectacular, but by adding the serifs and by adding the thickening downstroke, so that we've got, again, this visual contrast of thick, thin, it suddenly becomes something a bit more than scrawly writing. So I hope that's something, I'm sure that's something that you've done before. So one little tip on the thick and thin. So any questions on that one, by the way? No, everybody all right? Okay. So here's a little top tip on the thick and thin, which is, if you've got a calligraphy pen, you can hold it at a 45-degree angle and just do some zigzags. You don't have to be good zigzags. Just so that you've got this thick and thin. I've done this with my very pale one, so it's not your eyes that have gone blurry. And it will show you where the thicks and thins are. So let me show you with this darker colour one. So here on this, look, I've got my A. This zigzag has told me where the thick is on that A. Here's a W. But even an N there, a bit of a funny N, but it still shows you that if you're doing an N, your thick is in the middle, and look, you've got thins on the other side. There's a V, your thick is on that side. So if you ever go to a National Trust property near Wootton Under Edge, called Newark Park, and they've got their A's and V's all on the wrong way round on their signage, it'll start to make your eyes go funny now that you know this. And the same, it's got an M. So there's your thick, there's your thick. And the same with if you were, you know, doing a lowercase m. It's a good little tip. But what it will also, so here's your Y as well, because it's the same as the V. And then what this will make you realise is that on the example I've given you, the thick is in the wrong place on this example. So draw a circle around it and put a cross through it. It's a real bugbear of mine, and I don't know why I did that, but I'm sorry, it's in print now. So this is a really great little tip for just reminding yourself of where the thicks and thins are they're in the right place. You can create all sorts of crazy lettering, but it doesn't look wrong. So when you look at lettering, if it doesn't look quite right, it may well be that the thicks and thins have been added in the wrong place. Okay. It's not different for a left-handed person at all. The rules apply to lettering, not what hand you're in. So it's the visual rules, as it were, of what looks correct. Doing your zigzags, that you might need to change the angle of your paper. But there are lots of really, really brilliant left-handed calligraphers that do the most incredible and beautiful lettering. And so if you're interested in learning from somebody, then Gaynor Gough is probably one of the most well-known left-handed calligraphers, and she's written quite a few books, and she does do a lot of teaching. But no, the same rules apply whatever. So the thicks and thins in the right place are going to make your letters look brilliant, even if your letters are like I did, done with your non-dominant hand with your eyes closed. As long as you put those thicks and thins in the right place, you're on a winner. Okay. So on again, still on this sheet, I've got an alphabet here which does have some of the thicks and thins, and usually the way that I do those now, because I know where all the thicks and thins are, by drawing them manually, so I know that my thick is on this side of the A because I've just got that. But you can do these caps just like we did before with single line caps. And then using the reference or using the zigzag rule sheet, just add in where you know the thick stroke to be. And then adding a serif in if you want to. Remembering with the curves, this is really important, that the thinnest part on all the curved letters are here. So if you bring so you want a nice sort of thick part on the curve there, and you don't want that thick to move into the sort of upper and lower parts of the bowl, because you end up then with a heavy bottom. And this is something I see a lot in lettering, and it's what starts to make the lettering not look good. So it's not the structure of the letter, it's where these thicks and thins are that start playing with the visuals of the letter. Like I did with this one, where I've done with my left hand, what it's become now is a really quirky and interesting potential hand that I could use, and it's because the thicks and thins are in the right place. But those curves are tricky. You really do want to keep the thin in there so that you've got a contrast. So keep your thins. That wasn't a great example because I went a little bit. This is what happens, isn't it? The thick starts creeping in. I've got to say that I really do get the most pleasure out of doing this type of lettering in my sketchbooks. Well, not just this style, but just lettering in my sketchbooks in general, because there's no need for it to be beautiful in a formal sense. It can just be interesting. And each time I do lettering and play with lettering in my sketchbook, which, like I said to you before, is a really safe place for me to play around with lettering, I start to make discoveries, and it's quite often with lettering that goes a bit wrong, or I'm not quite sure where it's going to go, but I get some really interesting lettering results. So there's a few more things to work on in this little sheet, but I'm just going to let you have a play with those in your spare time. This is particularly a really, if you like doing the monolines, this little hand works really well. So using this alphabet to write, again, some of your days of the weeks or months of the year, where you've got a really lovely elongated S, which is so much easier to do than normal S's, by the way. And these lovely sort of arches and loops, and then contrasting these huge letters that are really wide with a tiny thin letter. Again, this is our element of contrast. We've got width and then narrow, and width and narrow. So this is really easy to do, this alphabet, and really nice to play with in your sketchbooks. So if you like this monoline, that's great. Also on this sheet, before I leave it, there's lots of tiny little embellishments. So they look like they've just been added to fill space, and really they're just as an additional reference. So this lettering sheet works with the banners and headers sheet that you've got here, to be a really like a, you know, I love these recipe systems in my classes. I love being able to provide you with masses of ingredients. So these are like ingredients to cook up loads of different lettering combinations for everything. So by combining some of these systems that I've looked at here on this sheet with little arrows and little doodles and bits and pieces, and then banners and headers, really you've got so much to go on. I'm just looking on the sheet, just checking if there's anything that I need to go over it with you on here. I've been using this sheet, it hasn't got a date on it, quite often they do, I think literally for about 7 years in my classes. And I've still got people who've got the original sheet from 7 years ago, like photocopied again and again, and all like little bits and sellotape together, stuck in their sketchbooks, and then they just always sort of flip back and refer and sort of use an idea repeatedly through the sketchbook. The bunting system works really well for little cards and for titles, and if you're keen on drawing little banners, this can work really well as well for little added things. I must admit, my favourite little addition to a sketchbook page would be, so let's imagine this is my page and I've got my illustration on here. I really like just adding very simple, so you could use your date stamp with this. In fact, let's just do that. Has it got enough ink on it? Not really. Try again. So you could combine it's the right way up. I've got April Fool's Day on there. Pop a little stamp on. And then I've got a fine liner here. So this is the edge of my sketchbook page. And then I literally just sort of stick in a little banner. So I did a little dot there. So I've got a central line, a central point. And I quite often add these, or even just a little square. I'm getting rid of that pen because it's not working. And then add a little stitching if you fancy. I know loads of you like using fine liners, they're so nice. I like it not too fancy in my sketchbook because I really like little simple little methods like this. So you can imagine if this was a sketchbook page, that, you know, this is simple. The same with, you could have one, just a little block going down. Now, these are really simple layout techniques using the edge of the page. If you've got these little, you've got little brush pens or anything like this, sometimes you can get grey ones of these. You can then just put a little bit of shadow down the side. Very simple. Just don't want to add lots of lettering stuff to an already bulging kit. You know, so just a little shadow with that is simple. And you could, if you've got watercolor or watercolor pencils, and you've used a colour in your sketch, you could also just sort of run that colour with the brush and the watercolour just underneath those, so you've got this sort of cohesion, but keeping it really simple. In fact, whilst I'm on keeping it simple, I have got a tendency to make things really complicated, and I tried that in my sketchbooks, getting really complicated with lettering, and it was just terrible. And I've actually, in fact, I do this in life, and I've got this written on my wall in my studio to remind myself, and some of you might know what this means, but I have to keep looking at it when I'm doing work and commissions for people, because this is what it stands for. I'm not calling you stupid, this is referring to myself, but it's a really good reminder when things start to get complicated in your art, is just to take it right back. And lettering is something that it is a bit of a problem like that. You know, we can tie ourselves in knots, and quite often the simplest solution is the best one. Okay, so what else have we got? Oh, this is the other thing I really wanted to go over with you, is this stretched letter form, which is brilliant for sketchbooks. So again, lots of you may have touched on this before. So you can do it if you're proficient with broad nibs. You can make really beautiful thicks and thins by pulling it. It's sometimes called a pulled italic or stretched italic, but it's a really, really simple thing to do, again with your own handwriting. And you can see on this sheet at the bottom, you know, I've written the word love there. Actually, is it love? No, long. I couldn't even read it, because that was my point. Do you need to be able to read it? Could this lettering just act like this, like a small border around a little sketch that you've done, so that perhaps there is a sound that you've heard? We talked about in the last class where we were looking at journaling without drawing, we were talking about capturing different emotions, not just the things that we see. We were capturing different emotions in our art, and perhaps using text, even slightly illegible text, we can harness a sense of something else that we were experiencing in our journals. So this could be a collection of pebbles, this could be the sound of the sea, or some talking that you heard, or the smell of some chips, or something like that. But it almost doesn't need to be legible. So I'll show you how to do that, but I just wanted to show you how I've left all my sketchbooks again at the studio, and because it's half term, I've not been there very much. This is a sketchbook page when they were muck spreading. I don't know, has anybody ever journaled about muck spreading before? I don't think so. But the reason that I was out there in the smelly garden was because it was the lockdown last year, and I think I was in my special escaping place, which is behind our shed. Yeah. And obviously I needed to escape and to be out, you know, the smell of the poo was better. And I started drawing all the birds that were flying around because they were spreading muck. And our garden is in the middle of 3 different fields, so it is quite potent. And I think, so I've used some different types of lettering as a border, and this is quite rare for me. So there was obviously a desperate escape required, because I'd actually put quite a lot of time and effort into laying this out, but no lines. I think I just started writing one like a border, and then I ran out of that. I thought that typeface was, that hand was too complicated, so I then just put my own handwriting, and then I obviously got a bit bored with that, so I then started to do the stretched italic, but quite I mean not a particularly routine way, but all of it holds together, and it kind of, well, actually I was quite pleased with it in the end. It sort of holds these birds in, but really the all I was doing is I was just sat and just drawing the birds as they were moving and flying. But yeah, so the stretched italic can be really useful as a little anchor. So let's have a go at doing that. Now I did this before when I was learning formal italic, and it didn't even cross my mind that it could be used in journals, but I've seen quite a lot of people do it. And I think, you know, as a title, so here, 4 Days in New York, you know, this would work really well as a little sort of introduction to, if you had a little travel journal and you wanted your first page to have some lettering on the front, but you just didn't know where to start. This is kind of a fail-safe, interesting and expressive form of lettering that's quite easy to do. So you can use your own handwriting for this. You can also use a kind of, if you know, like an old-fashioned sort of joined up cursive lettering, it can work really well with this. So just start off doing a joined up word. So I've got to think of let's do happy. Try it in lowercase. So here is happy joined up. Some of you might not be used to joined up writing anymore, but this type of lettering relies on having joins between all the letters. So some letters you might find more difficult to join than others. The technical term for these joins, the joining stroke, is a ligature, but we're going to call it a joining stroke. I'm just looking at some of the more difficult letters to join. If anybody's got any that's cropped up and they don't know how to join them, most of the joins are on the top of the sheet, but I'm happy to go over. It's just sort of a nice bit of practice, really. This could be your handwriting practice. So once you've got your word joined up, try extending the join so there's a bigger gap. It might be that with letters like H and M and N, you can make that a really long letter as well. So it's part of the stroke. Do your A, make it long, P, long. Now I'm sort of trying to keep the joining stroke about the same distance. So that's a kind of a practice in its own right. I'm going to try the word stretch now, and I'm going to do it even more. So you have to do a funny S. I'm not crossing my T, look, I've just put the line there, that can stay at the end. I'm going to go off the paper. So then I'm going to come back and put the crossbar on the T's. And that's the same with if you've got dots on your eyes. So what you can do once you've kind of mastered this nice stretching is you can use the modern calligraphy in these stretched marks. So remember that we added thick areas where there was a downstroke. So that curve S went up and then it went down. So I'm going to just make that a little bit thicker. Keep the ligature, the joining stroke, nice and thin. That went up, so T went down. So I'm not going at all into this joining stroke. So that went like that, and then that went down. So again, you can see that where I'm adding these thicker parts, our eye is drawn to this lovely contrast. The R becomes the joining stroke, and then round and then down on that E. So again, we're going thick, thin, up, down on the T. Remember that that slowly joins the curve. Join. Up and then down on the H. Lovely. Now that H also, that went up, this went down, so I think that could be thick. I don't know, I might have, I don't know, I might leave that. So it's quite subtle. Let's just go in close. But interesting. And I've had lots of people do, I did a summer travel journaling workshop, which went over 6 weeks a few years ago. And this became like the hand of the course, because everybody got really obsessed with experimenting with it in their own time and doing different sort of patterns and overlaps. And it's great for a travel journal when you're by the sea, because you can look, I've done one line of text in a thick fine liner, and then I've tested out some more of the thick fine liner playing with the lettering, and then I've put some of a thin fine liner over the top. And so again, it's illegible, but it's got a feeling of the sea. So it's a really nice way to kind of embody a different thing, slightly more abstract concepts in your lettering without overcomplicating it. Yeah, I just realised I've got another little journal that's got so many little experiments like this. I've left it at the studio, but what I did is I ended up creating on a piece of paper, doing lots of different types of lettering like this with thick and thin pens, and then just chopping out little squares and then sticking them on like a little collage. So I was listening to the sound of the sea and people talking and writing down what they were saying in this lovely stretched method. But then because you couldn't read it anyway, I thought I'd just chop it up and stick it in my sketchbook, and it looked really pretty because there was lots of thin and thick lines. So chopping up your experiments can look really good like this. Okay, is there any questions on this stretched italic? Would you like me to do any more demos with that, or are you happy?
Hi, it's Gillian here.
Hi, Gillian.
Hi. I tried calligraphy before classes and I fell out with it. I find it very difficult being left-handed.
Yes.
I find it so much easier to go the other way.
Yeah. So are you an over or under lefty?
I'm an under.
You're an under, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess with formal calligraphy as well, if you're under, do you end up smudging lettering as well?
Yes, because like doing ticks and things like that, I do them sort of left-handed. So yeah. If I'm doing any sort of art, I've got to try and work from right to left.
Oh God.
And a lot of my books, if I've got notebooks and things, I start from the back and work to the front if they're ring binders, because like the Japanese do.
Yeah.
So I do find it quite difficult, but I will, persevere unless you know of any tricks for me to.
Well, I'm not brilliant with left-hand calligraphy, but I know from teaching modern calligraphy and brush lettering that turning your paper into ridiculously, unusual methods can really help. So that was one of the tricks that I was shown that seemed to work really well with these different forms of lettering, and with to try and get different angles as well. But I would really recommend you seek out Gaynor, because she, like I said, she's a left-handed calligrapher and really well known for beautiful italics, and she'll have lots of tips and tricks under her belt, and she's a brilliant teacher. So if I write her name down here,
Well, the calligrapher that I went to, she actually does work on some of the books in York Minster.
Yeah.
So she's Gaynor Goff. Is it
Gaynor Goff? Yeah.
Gaynor Goff. Right. Thank you. So
yeah,
she was an excellent teacher, but
yeah,
I think she was better at actually lettering than teaching.
yeah.
But it's something you've got to persevere with. I'm
Well,
a bit of a free spirit. I think calligraphy is proper calligraphy is maybe a bit too restrictive for me. I like to do what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, hopefully some of these techniques, especially if you're not actually doing them, so you might have noticed that most of the lettering I've been doing today, I've just done with a pencil, which I really like these Palomino Blackwings, which are quite expensive pencils, but they are so lovely and soft to use. So even something like a 9B pencil can be nice.
Yeah.
And what it does to your lettering using a pencil, if you're just practicing, is that the lead pulls against the fibers and textures of the paper, and so the lines you make are much slower.
Okay.
So if you are practicing handwriting, using a pencil is a really good thing to use. If you've got things like, I've only got a glittery gel pen example here, but gel pens, I love using gel pens, but
me too.
And biros, but they do scatter across the page really, really quickly. So if you're looking to practice lettering, a pencil is, firstly, it's nice because you feel like you can rub it out. It's nice to use, so it's much more sensual in your hand and on the paper. But I do love the slowness that it creates and the drag on the paper. So I definitely think that there is so much room in lots of people's lives for I would call it adaptive lettering. So it's using something and making it work for you rather than following the rules. And it's what I've learned a lot about illustration is that that there are a few rules, like visual techniques and tricks, so not even rules, that make things look better. But knowing that you can do anything you want is so liberating. So and certainly, trying things with felt tip brush pens and felt tip calligraphy pens, it suddenly feels a bit more throwaway, and I think there's a bit less pressure.
Yeah.
So that might be worth a go as well.
Well, I've got a whole art room full of pens that I can put my hands to play with. So, but just, watching you. Sorry, I don't want to take away the class, but
no,
just
fine.
Looking at it's just ideas.
Yes,
ideas, and just stocking up my little pot of ideas.
Yeah, and I think definitely these classes work well to give you permission as well, and that's what a lot of people find, is that sometimes we get ideas stuck in our head, and then when somebody shows you how to sort of break free of that, it's like you've been given permission to do something that you've kind of got stuck in a rut with.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so is there any other questions on the stretched? Have you all had a go, and how's it going? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you reckon? Do you need me to demonstrate it any further? Are you all right?
Tips? It's Hilary. Have you got any tips for the corners? Because I've just tried it.
Corners of
the border. When you go around the border.
Oh, well done, Hilary. Okay. No, I don't think I have. Except that I break words off. So they are completely illegible. So have you carried on the whole word?
I've broken them.
You've broken
I just thought, I don't know if we could we have a close-up of that beautiful.
Should we have a little go then?
Don't dwell, it's just, I just wondered how you did the corners.
So let's say we'll just draw a little thing. So I've documented a butterfly in my journal on a lovely walk that I've just been on. And so I guess what you could do is, if you're doing it in pen and you were a bit concerned that it was going to go wonky, you could just sort of do a bit of a loose, sorry, I'll go a bit, in fact, I'll do this darker. So we'll imagine that I'm doing this very lightly. This, you could just sort of do a very light pencil line around your illustration. Try it with, is this my non-working fine liner? No, it's a good one. So let's write, I'm going to start at a corner. So there's my T. Oh, now what I might do is join the base of that T. I don't know if this is going to work, into the I. Beautiful. So I've got another letter on the corner there. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to, beautiful butter. I'm still trying to join them. Or how do you spell butterfly? So I've sort of joined them up on there. But on here, I haven't joined them up at all. I've just, oh look, I've crossed some over here. Just seemed to be the end of a letter. So then when I've turned it, I've crossed over that other, sort of the beginning of that letter. I've got different ones.
Thanks.
One. I think it's just having a little practice around.
I've done the ligatures at the corners, but I have done that all the way around. So I suppose if you choose and it's a pattern, then that works.
The other thing you could do with this is, so I've started this way, is that I could then turn it around the other way. And I don't know if this is going to work. So I've got two together. So sometimes I do that. So I mess around with the rhythm. So some of them are closer. Now I don't really want to join that up, so I'll just try. Oh, I've spelled butterfly wrong now. Butterflies are nice. I can't think of anything else to write. I'm going to try that S. So also, if you're going illegible, you can join up the spaces between the words. So literally no rules at all, but what might be worth practicing, so I'm going back to my ancient book of lettering, which is my lettering.
It looks like a spell book.
I know. So this was, I think quite a few people have already seen this, but this is a diary, an album from 1826, and it was in a barn that my dad keeps loads of stuff because he does loads of house clearances. And it was flooded, and all these lovely ancient books got damaged and started going mouldy. So my dad gave it to me, and I took covers off them and sort of tried to rescue them and turn them into books. But I then bound in some other bits, some other pages into the covers, and use it as a place to record lettering ideas and letter development, and sort of doodle when I'm sat on the sofa. And then that was from the AGM, Letter Exchange AGM. Anyway, there's things like, I found some lettering from an old gravestone, so I thought I'd try developing that into what might be a hand and trying it with different tools. So that's the other thing that you could do. If you found that one of these styles of lettering that I've done today you quite like using, why don't you try it with all the things that you've got in your drawer? Try it with, your really knackered old highlighter pen, a really run out felt tip pen, brush pens, dip pens. So I was trying to do this ancient lettering with a felt tip brush pen to see what it came out like. Yeah, so there's lots of bits and pieces in here, but what I wanted to show you, so that is a bit like the blind contour drawing that we've done in week 1 of this course, where I was kind of like blind contour lettering, just writing words and things that people were saying in a charity shop in Tetbury. And the woman said, it's all a bit mature. They all talk like this around here, like pirates. It's all a bit maternity, isn't it? Well, yes, I suppose so. But this shop is a bit like that. So I was just writing down these conversations without taking my pen off and writing them down instead of across. So they start to become abstracted. So that could be a really interesting thing for a journal, couldn't it? With one of these sort of slightly transparent pens, so it's like a conversation in the background. This was a point when I was starting to explore conversation as an area of interest, which is something that I really love. So here's more conversations, look, completely illegible. And this one, I started writing, and then I didn't take my pen off when I started the other line. So I just pulled the pen across and started writing the next line, pulled the pen across. So you get these like crossed out marks, and then another conversation that was going down. I like to show stuff like this because I haven't used any of this in my work, but it's important for me to show you that that things like this are allowed. We tell ourselves that they're not allowed because they're messy or that they're not the correct way to write, but we're making art, so everything's okay. Anyway, this is what I wanted to show you, which are rhythm in pooled italics. So I'm all the time just having a go with different types of rhythm. So you can see that I've tried having one. So here we go, sort of all the standard bits that we've done. Look, writing one word and then pulling out the joining strokes a bit more. But then what happens if you have one letter, pull the joining stroke, but then do 2 really close together and then 1 apart, 2 close together, 1 apart. What about if they're all sort of close and then you have 1 ligature, which is the rhythm of the word and the way we read it changes. So Monday. Anyway, I wouldn't read it like that, Monday, but I would be interested if I had a little sketch and I went a bit wrong and then I couldn't fit the Y in. So I'll just like have a long gap and stick a Y in, and then it looks like I'm doing something incredibly deep and meaningful and creative, but actually I'm making it look like that. So here's big gaps between the M, O and N and D, and then day is really close together. This is a really fun way to play with lettering. Again, it's breaking those rules of what we know to be okay. So more little, so this one, instead of a really, do you remember I said to keep the ligature, the joining stroke really thin? So I've just decided here that I'm obviously not going to do that. And I've just made it really thick just to see what it looks like. So there's lots of, look at that, that's kind of not, I couldn't even read that as much, or no, maybe I could. But the joining strokes are like really straight lines. So I'm not asking you really to, this might be a bit too unusual or weird, or you might not like it. But it's really just to show you that you can do anything with your lettering and make it work for you and not have to worry about the rules, especially in your sketchbook, because you can really mess them up. Here I'm planning pieces, trying to be drunk on lettering. cutting bits of lettering out. So it's quite nice to have scrapbooks of lettering. If you see nice lettering styles in magazines or in newspaper and adverts, you could add them in. If they inspire you, try to adapt it. And then always at the back of my sketchbooks, all the interesting things, colour tests, love letters, tests with paint, quotes I write a lot. And then because I'm not very good at bookbinding, I have to stick bits together, otherwise all the whole book falls apart. So it's for those of you that are interested, it's Coptic bound, but very badly. But it's such a beautiful book cover. Shame about the binding. Anyway, one last little thing then to cover. So really, like I said, this is about giving you permission. There's a few sheets here just to play with if you like whimsical lettering. I can't remember if this is a 1.5 hour or 2 hour session. I always go over anyway. Is everybody all right? Not nodding off. As long as you've not got onto your 4th gin, we'll be all right. I'm all right for wine, Lou. I'm all right for wine because I'm too busy talking. Got no time to drink it. Okay, so just briefly, you've got this order sheet as well. So this works, again, as my little kind of recipe system. Have it just to refer to so that you've got lots of things that you know you can copy and use it with all these to sort of combine lettering and borders and banners and bits and pieces. So use it as part of your toolbox. You can see just down the bottom here, there's some really nice little corners, and the idea is that they you could just turn those into whole frames, so they're just corner ideas, but just with small patterns that you could add to build a whole frame or border. And for those of you that are interested in Zentangling, it's the same principle. For those that you don't know, we've done this before, and you really need to do these with a thick nibbed fine liner and a fine nibbed fine liner, so a thin one, so that you've got, again, these areas of thick black line and then tiny little thin details. So the same with that, you would do your border. I would suggest drawing it in pencil and then going over it with pen. But you do a thicker line and then tiny little leaf details with your thin pen to get that really lovely contrast in all these lovely little designs. Just a top, I'll just give you a quick little top tip on, so you had a word that you wanted to add. So we had happy birthday that you'd written in lovely, you spent ages doing some really nice lettering. I do borders like this, so I make a little mark with a pencil. So remember, I never use a ruler. I always eyeball it. I just do these little marks with my pencil of kind of where I want the border to go, and then I'd sort of do the next little mark. So I think I kind of want it around there. So now I've got quite a few little dots. So I've done the top and the bottom, the side to side, done a few corners, then I'll just fill in those gaps. There we go. So you can see that I'm gradually forming an even-ish sort of circle or border around my lettering, which is informal, non-measured. You can join those all up and then go round them with your pen, knowing that you've got the line there with a pencil. And then once you've got your pen line and it's dried, you can rub it out. So that works really well, doing your lettering first, and then adding a border around it, rather than doing your border first and then, you know, messing up and trying to, you know, not getting your lettering right in the middle. So I would recommend that. And it's the same probably with most of these. Actually, some of these I think you need to do the like things like the bunting first. You'll have to have a little experiment with some of those. But definitely with the borders, it works well doing it like that. Okay. So last but not least, just really, I love doing very simple drawn letters. This is a variation on the bubble hand, which I think I mentioned in Teeny Tiny Typewriters. Those of you that don't live in England, bubble writing is something that lots of children do, and kind of goes, you just do one letter like this, and then the next letter joins on. So it's kind of like cartoon writing. And I loved doing bubble writing. All the signage at the school fete was all done in bubble writing. And I was head of signage at Malmesbury Primary School for a couple of years, head of design. And this is a very, because I've still got this lovely, I just love bubble writing. So this is like, a bit of a more advanced level, really. If you like drawing letters, then feel free to draw them freehand. If you don't, then they just build over a framework, a skeleton really nicely. So with a pencil, you could do your very basic letter, and then so you could then rub that skeleton out. But by drawing around the outside, so you could draw around the outside with a pencil or pen and then rub the middle bit out. But actually the middle bit's quite nice, but you're looking for generally an even line all around the outside, but with that structure. So that's a kind of more of a cheaty way to do this lettering, if that's the sort of lettering you like doing. And again, doing the outside with a thick fine liner, and then adding these tiny little patterns and details with a thin fine liner is really a nice thing to do. And look, I've done it all for you. You don't even have to think about the patterns to put in all the letters, because you've got references on these and there's lots of little patterns down the bottom. So just try mixing and matching and copying some of these little bits, and you form this interesting mishmash alphabet, which is really nice to colour in. It might be that you use one of these a bit like an initial letter, so that you just have one letter on your sketchbook page, but it could be a really beautifully decorated letter. Okay. I'm nearly lettered out. I never thought I'd say that. Oh, I have got a little colour thing to quickly show you. So we just do whimsical, then a tiny, really fast colour, and then we'll need to all go and have a lie down, I think, definitely. Okay, so you've got this little whimsical sheet, and again, this is a really, really forgiving alphabet for you to do, which is really fun to do and very quick to do. So have a little go at doing a few of the letters. So they've just got nice little curly bits on. You can kind of add the curly bits wherever you want. So here's the A. I'm doing it on my dot paper, obviously. So I'm doing a normal A, then adding a thick line, and I'm kind of curving the line. Let's go a bit closer. Adding curved serifs, you can bring that curly bit in. They're very, even though I'm curving the lines, just looking to see if there's any sort of tricky letters to do. Making that thicker. They're not curved in the same way that a Roman capital needs to be. It's all right if they splay out a little bit here and there. by adding on the right hand side line, making one of, well, it can be on the left, but on one side, making it thicker. Again, that's where we're getting our little eye magnet and the contrast, and suddenly it all starts to pull together. Perhaps where you've got curly bits, you could add in one of your dots. That's going to work really well too. You could, see on the lettering we've done before, you'd have two thicks there either side of the H, but there's just a thinny on that side. Any difficult letters? Oh, the S is not very nice on this hand, because it just goes thick and then thin in the middle, but it is easier. I love adding these little curly bits. Remember to add some thick parts.
There's a question about, you mentioned watercolours in the prep. Could you quickly mention how you would use those?
Yeah, I'm going to show you watercolours in just a second. Just show you a few more little details with this, but this is just something to play with. So once you've done your main body of these letters, you can have, if you have a look right at the top here, it's quite little, but you can see that there are patterns again, like before, added into the main body of the letters, which is giving you the third element of contrast. So we've got thin, thick, and then all of the patterns again are down here. So try with a little thin fine liner, adding patterns to the inside of your letters. And that will look, it just looks so lovely. So again, that could be an initial letter. Or just, I think these are really good for birthday cards, I think. Really quick, really lovely. And I also like to add tiny embellishments on the outside of letters as well, which, because I'm not very good at spacing, if you've got a massive gap between letters, you could just add these like little shapes to infill that gap so that you don't get like a gaping hole, a void. Okay. And so you've got an upper and lower case. There's some lettering variations there just to have a little play with. And numbers. They don't have to be perfect. They're very doodly. So very briefly then, before we go, let me just show you a bit of colour. So through all of my experimentation for myself, what I've found to be the type of lettering that I like to do really quickly is brush lettering. I didn't know that I'd ever come to that conclusion, but that's what I do. And there might be, you definitely, I know you'll be different. Some people love brush lettering, some people don't, but I just wanted to show you. So I've done, I've used a little end of a brush. So sometimes they're called sign pens, but this one is waterproof. And again, it's one of those brilliant double-ended pens. This is a KB Sailor pen, which is expensive, but there's a brilliant one on Colt pens, which I'll put in the video information when I send it out to you tomorrow. It's only about £3 or £4 as well, but it's got a little end and a big end. So I would do my lettering in my journals a bit like this, because I can do it really quickly. And it's waterproof. So one option, so it could be that you've done your fine liner lettering, you've done your cheats calligraphy, or you've done your pulled italic, and you just want to add a bit of zhuzh to it. The quickest thing is adding colour. So one option could be with one of the, like a felt tip pen, a highlighter pen, a brush pen, just literally adding a layer of colour over your title lettering. Option one. It's instant, it's really, really quick. Looks very nice. Gavin said it looks very 80s. Something else you could do is taking a watercolour pencil and literally, so as I say, well, this should be waterproof, this pen. So really messy, but with a little bit of water and a brush. Oh, this is dirty, this brush. Oh dear. Just sort of messing up the pencil a little bit so that you've got, you know, remembering that we're trying to not to bust a gut about it. That could be another little colour option. And then finally, we've got some watercolours that you might, so you know that I like using watercolours in a travel journal, so I've normally always got them. And I have Mrs. Hinched mine with some elbow grease and given it a really good clean for this occasion. So it might be that you just do the lightest wash of watercolour over your lettering. Again, really effective. You could be a bit fancy pants and drop in another colour into it. Oh, the brush is a travel. It's a travel paint brush by Rosemary & Co. And I don't know what size it is, but there aren't very many sizes available. And it's really good because it obviously fits back into the handle, and then it can go in your pencil case. So you don't have to have a brush holder, but it's just a travel brush from Rosemary & Co. But yeah, I've quite often, obviously, I use Rosemary & Co brushes all the time, and they're really nice. Not very expensive. Well, you can buy expensive ones. Yeah. So so that's really quick colour in 3 ways. But if you've got, you know, anything that you've got, so if you've got some of these, a felt tip pen, kids Crayola pens are really good. And perhaps the sun was out in May. Let's hope it will be. So just, well, the sun is out, isn't it, in the UK? It's just not very warm at the moment. But that element of colour could also really tie in to perhaps if you've got something going on your page. So perhaps it is April or May and you've sketched flowers or foliage, that perhaps you then could just do a little wash of the same colour on your lettering, and it will really pull it all together. If you're, but like I said, only do that if you've got either waterproof stamp ink or waterproof pen. All of the fine liners I use, and I think most of these ones, Unipin and the little Mitsubishi ones, are waterproof. The cheaper ones tend not to be, but look, it's got it on there, water and fade proof. But you might have to do a little test in the back of your sketchbook just to see if it because you don't want it obviously going everywhere. I hope that really it was, sorry, it's such a quick colour thing, but honestly I wouldn't spend a lot of time doing colour on my lettering unless I was enjoying having a little potter about and a doodle with colouring pens like we did earlier over some brush lettering, you know, or you've got that little structure. But otherwise, I mean, I guess also using maybe coloured brush pens and things like that. But really finding, I think the absolute key is to try all of these different things and find something that you like the look of, and then repeatedly use that in your sketchbook for a little while. And what will happen, and so this is what happened with this brush lettering, is that it's sort of become my style, and it becomes part of your hand. And then it makes your pages in your sketchbook look really cohesive, and each one sort of stays together really nicely. But it's been years and years of playing around with lettering. And I used to do really ornate titles that were like an illustration in their own right, which took the best part of the day. And then I didn't have any time to do the actual sketchbook stuff. So I just want to get quick lettering down now. So before I go up to my other camera, is there any questions for any of the bits that I've done?
Yes. Hi, Lucia. Could you kindly write another word with the brush pen, please?
Yeah.
Because every time that I use it, it looks like a horror film.
Okay. So I think, yeah, I definitely will, Alma, but I think what I will do is a basics brush class, and that will probably be better. Sorry?
A big swoopy one.
Okay. So I think, yeah, I think it would be better to do a proper brush class. But just quickly, just make sure with your brush pen that instead of using the tip, that you are pushing it down and using the whole length of the nib on every downstroke.
Okay.
So this is obviously a big version. So it's lots of pressure and release on it.
That helps.
Yeah, so but making sure that if every downstroke is really wide, and I quite often take my angle my pen up to do the upstroke. So I take it off, stop, up, stop, down, stop. So that's a good way to practice it. Down, you know. So just doing these ups and downs. But do it with a big brush first, and make sure that it's a felt tip brush pen rather than a fibre, where all of the brushes, the bristles splay like they do on a normal brush. So when you press it down, they would all splay like this. So a felt tip is going to give you much more control. And then, but these, you can get these lots of little sign pens that have got these little fud, they're called fud nibs. And then it's quite nice to, once you've done it big, is then to go small, but use the same principle of the whole length of the nib on the downstroke. But I think that needs to be a separate class, because I think there's probably quite a lot of people that would really like to have a go at some really informal brush lettering, and there's loads of things that you can do to doctor it as well. So say you've done this and it's not looking great, you could get your fine line and then just kind of build up the bit that wasn't thick enough. So that could be a really nice thing to do. You know, sort of build up some serifs. You could add another line in to give a bit of energy. You know, have a really nice play. Know that you haven't, once you've put that ink down, you could still, you know, have a go with a load of other bits and pieces and bring those in. Does that answer your question, Alma?
Absolutely, and more than that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, but yes to brush lettering class.
Good. Okay. Is everyone all right so far? Or any other things down here on my desk that anybody needs to see or go over? Nope. Okay. So, hello, I'm back again. Everybody all right? You're exhausted now. I am. I hope you've got enough to keep you going. There's like a ton of stuff. Is anybody, so this is the end of the session now. I think there potentially could be another couple of lettering sessions, perhaps on layout of different styles of lettering, perhaps on some brush lettering. If there's any other lettering-y bits and pieces that you think would be really helpful or that you'd like to learn, I don't ever really want to teach formal lettering, because I think the style of sketchbooking that I do, it just doesn't complement it really, because I'm really, you know, I want to get things down quickly. I think that's really important. So it's finding these quick cheats that are going to work, and finding the thing that you like doing. That's the key, because then it's going to look amazing. Right, so is there anybody that would like to share anything? So by the way, if you need to go now, that's absolutely fine. Go and get your gym jams on, go and have your tea, or put a screaming child to bed, or sort the dog out or something. But if you'd like to stay on, anybody, you're always very welcome, because some people really love to show their stuff, and this is what we miss about our real art classes. So goodbye to those that need to go, but if you'd like to stay, please feel free. Bye, Denise. So is anybody, if you'd like to show anything, I don't know, these sketchbook classes, quite often people don't have so much stuff, but hold it up to the camera and I'll do my best to get round everybody. If I can just see anybody holding stuff up to the camera or nearby their face, I'll click on you. So Lisa. Hello. Oh, those look really beautiful. So I think because you have to stay muted, we won't be able to hear you unless you unmute. But that's really beautiful lettering, Lisa.
I love this stretchy technique very much.
It looks so effective. You've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
It looks beautiful.
I'm so excited by it.
You keep going. Try it with different tools. Lovely, thank you. So Alma. Oh my goodness, Alma. This is our whole sketchbook page.
Yes, I was trying to do that.
And you've even got some bubble letters in there. I'm really glad.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
And especially on the stretchy ones. I was not good at that, and I think I got the hang now.
I really like how you've put the stretched one up the length of your page as well. It looks so effective. It's like a divider in your page. So it's a great device, isn't it? To add to the layout.
Yeah, I'll play with watercolor now.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Good luck. It's gorgeous. Thank you. Okay. Back to the gallery. Sorry, it takes me a little while, everybody. I've got Julia. Oh, those look nice. Hi, Julia.
Hello there. Oh, I don't know my light.
You look like you're in a little cupboard under the stairs like me.
No, I'm in my conservatory.
Oh.
And it's very old and tatty, so excuse it, won't
It's a bit chilly in there.
I love the stretch lettering too.
Oh, it looks really beautiful.
And I was just, yeah. And so then I did it with some gel pens.
And how did you find it with a gel? Was it nice?
Yeah, actually it was quite good. So I'm currently doing a little project on wooden seaside chalets for another art thing that I'm doing. Yeah. And do
you think that could...
thought this would be really lovely to sort of have with it, because I was looking for, I did a little bit of the other one as well, just tried those as well.
Yeah, oh, they look so nice. And actually the stretch lettering with the seaside chalets would be very in keeping, wouldn't it? With the...
Yes, because I was looking for things that I could maybe put in the sort of wooden panels, because I've just discovered that I'm down in Portishead in North Somerset. And I've just discovered that we've actually got quite a few that were here.
Oh, wow.
And I've just found out that my most favourite one, which is the last one left almost, somebody has just put in planning permission today to demolish it and put this monstrosity.
A house.
So I've kind of flicked it on Facebook and just see how it goes.
Yeah, well done. Oh, well, good luck with your campaign, and your lettering is beautiful.
Thank you. It's really good. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure. Pleasure. Right, who have we got? Francis. Let's have a look. Oh, those are nice. So what have you enjoyed, Francis?
Oh, well, there I am. Embellishing the letters. I love that. So you can
nice
mundane thing with a felt tip pen and then just monkey around with a so much fun.
Yeah, it's really lovely. I love looking at where your thicks and thins are. They look so effective. Yeah, it's nice to have that base, isn't it? Fantastic. Thank you. I think she's frozen. Thank you so much, Francis. Right, who've we got? Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Well, we've got you on mute.
Oh yeah, I've done it.
Oh, lovely. Your lettering's beautiful.
Thank you.
And I keep seeing this stretched italic, and everybody's looks so effective. You've nailed that.
That's really fun. I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, really beautiful. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Thank
Lovely.
you.
Thanks so much. Who've we got? Any more? Just hold up by your camera just so that I can see that you're happy for me to spotlight you. It's really nice having a nose at people's work. Christine, how have you got on? Hi, Christine. How are you?
I
can't hear you. Oh, you've got you. And how have you got on? What do you think about it?
Oh, just loved it.
Fantastic.
I mean, you know that I do quite a bit of lettering anyway, so but it's just been really good fun, especially the stretch ones. I love those.
Yeah. Oh, they're lovely.
But even the whimsical, I wouldn't have automatically gone to that. Sorry, my light's pretty bad in here.
That's all right.
But it's just been, I love doing that.
Yeah.
Great fun.
I think some of the styles of lettering and illustration that you wouldn't normally go to that are quite popular, when you then actually let yourself have a go, you realise that they are so much fun.
Yeah.
Really nice. Thank you so much.
Can I just ask you one thing about
that? Of course.
That dual end feud pen that you pen that you used? What was that?
It's a KB Sailor pen.
KB.
KB, capital K, capital B, and you can buy them from the Modern Calligraphy Company.
All right, it's just really nice to have the dual.
Yeah,
isn't it?
they are really nice to write with, but they're expensive for what they are. So this is about £7, £8. Whereas you can get, if you go onto Cult Pens, CULT, you can get double-ended brush pens for a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say, I mean, these are really nice, but the other ones are just as good. So, and like I said, a bit more cost effective because they run out really quickly. So I like to buy like a shed load. Right, who else have we got? Anyone else? Oh, Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Oh, they're beautiful. Hi. How did you get on? Oh, it's lovely. I love your stretch.
I really like this stretch. I like the way you can do the borders with it too.
Yes, yeah.
And I really enjoyed doing the so I've done this one in pencil, but the leaned letters that you did, the capital leaned.
Yeah.
I had lots of fun with the stretch one.
Isn't it nice to know that you can just keep playing with all these different letter forms? And yeah, the stretch looks so effective.
I do enjoy the Rhodia dot pads. They're really nice.
They're really nice, aren't they? And I love it that you could just have that pad on your lap and you haven't got to line up anything. You can just, with a pen or a pencil, you can just doodle away. And that's what, you know, is really going to help get that practice in without it feeling like it's practice, I think. But yeah, it's so nice. Lovely work. Gorgeous. Sarah Burrows. Oh my goodness, Sarah. Is this what you've done during the whole session? Crikey.
That is gorgeous.
It's really beautiful. We can't hear you, Sarah, sorry. It was silent, but very decorative. It's lovely, really nice. And I love the border around the A, that works so well.
I like this. I loved your sketchbook page with the border. I thought that was such a beautiful idea of a way to frame something. And I think, writing with my left hand and then going over it, that was how I did that bit. And that was way more effective than I thought it would be.
It looks so good.
It opens it up, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. And in fact, because I've been doing a lot of stuff with my left hand recently, having broken my right wrist, I've been really interested in the integrity and authenticity of the line that you get when you have got no control over it. It starts to become really interesting. So I think it's always a way, if you're a bit worried about anything, just do it in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. But I really love that. It's gorgeous. Gorgeous, thank you. It's a lovely page. Who've we got? Claire. Nice to see you, Claire. Hey, this is a good page.
Lisa.
This is nice.
Yeah,
So
I love that stretch as well.
Yeah, it's a winner all round, isn't it?
Yeah, and I made little hammock.
Oh, that's nice. So your lettering has become your illustration.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
And then I did a little
Frank, you've
bit
gone
of-
on to another page.
Yeah, but I cannot get the hang of those brush.
Yeah, that brush lettering is actually really good, Claire. You say you can't get the hang, but
yeah,
it looks really nice.
Struggle with that. I think my pen's wrong, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It's lots and lots of ideas.
Great. Well, it's so nice to have a big bunch of ideas to really sort of try and find what's yours, isn't it?
Yeah,
you like doing. And when
bring
you
some cohesion to it as well.
Yeah. And when you find that thing, it really pulls your sketchbook together because it then becomes quite stylized, which I think works really well. But that's a really lovely spread.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to share? Just checking in. I don't want to leave anyone out. June. Hello. Hi, June. I've got you on mute. You're still on mute still.
There I am. Hi.
There you go. Hi.
I wanted to say I didn't like it to start with. I think I'm just too inhibited. I need to become disinhibited.
Yeah.
Because you can see I'm used to being precise.
Yes. Yeah.
And I found it really hard. And you can just see in stages I'm starting to let it go and let it stretch out a bit.
Oh.
And then I started to feel happier. And then I got really stretchy. And then I was concentrating so hard on being stretchy that I couldn't spell it. I realised when I'd finished, I'd spelt it wrong.
No, that's a really good sign. That's a really good sign because it means that you aren't even thinking about being uptight or trying to spell it right.
Yeah, uptight, that's me.
Yeah. Do you know, I think every single page in my sketchbook is just full of spelling mistakes because firstly, I don't know how to spell. But secondly, when you start creating the letters and the words, you then completely forget what you're writing. But you're in the process.
On doing that. And before you said about doing the colours, I thought, oh, I'll dabble a little bit of colour on and do some different things.
Yeah.
And that really seemed to make it stand out a bit more. But I liked doing if you can see, the fancy lettering.
Yeah.
Just had a little go on that page.
Nice.
And when you were talking to start with, I'd done pencil, fine liner, and then a gel pen, just one of the banners. And
fantastic.
I haven't got a lot of materials, just using different ones for different effects.
Yeah,
really.
just using what you've got. Yeah.
No, it's nice. It's just nice to just focus on that, and I'm not thinking about anything else. Find it really relaxing.
Nice, isn't it? Yeah. It takes us out of the mundane, doesn't it? And we sort of escape for a little while. But yeah, it's really lovely to see how your lettering is symbolic of the way that you are feeling as well, that you were uptight.
Yeah.
Gradually, I bet your shoulders started to go down as well.
My little bit of meditation. Mindfulness.
Good. Okay, just checking through. Don't want to leave anyone out if there's anybody that would still like to share. Oh, Alison.
Oops.
Hi, Alison. Hi. Oh, your pulled italic looks really good.
Well, I got carried away and
I can't hear you very well, Alison. I don't know if that...
Sorry, I got carried away in doing the design in the middle, unfortunately. I tend to be a bit loose.
That's all right. What I love is that the lettering is quite wonky in a really nice way. So it's really flowing all the way around the design, and the structure is tight but loose at the same time, and it looks so effective.
I'm not good at doing things formally. I like to let go and scribble, I suppose, is what I like. So that appealed to me quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, perfect style for you.
Yeah.
And the idea that you can be quite relaxed with the rhythm, I think, is really useful, isn't it? You haven't got to, worry about the spacing and stuff like that. That's my main problem with lettering. is spacing. And when I was doing proper calligraphy, I just didn't, well, I did masses of practice and I got there in the end, but you've got to keep practicing at it to keep the spacing, and I can't be bothered.
No, and I don't think I'm that type of person. I'm fed up with it and screw it up, throw it in the bin.
I've got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
Drink tea.
I need to move on and do the next thing. Yeah.
Okay.
A bit too rushed.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there.
Thank you anyway, it's good.
It's a pleasure. So I'm just going to say goodbye to you all now. And let me just, I just want to check that I haven't got anyone else who is, no, I think we're all done. Didn't want to leave any of you out just in case you wanted to show. But, oh, hang on. Is that you, Claire? No, she's pressing buttons. So nice to see you all. Enjoy doing your lettering and playing with all these different styles. Next week I'm doing something completely different, doing illustrated paper dresses, as in China dresses. So if you fancy coming along, you'd be very welcome. It's a little paper craft project. But the following week we're then doing some really wild and reckless sketching techniques to help lose your fear. So you could also apply those to lettering too. But like I said, please do give me a shout if there's other things that you want to learn with lettering, because I can then build another little lettering workshop. Okay, nice to see you all. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Lucia.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.